Hey everybody, it's time to do another video. I started doing videos about a year ago, mad at the DNR from all the finger pointing that goes on. They wanna go and do K-fan and get in the newspapers and point fingers that deer farms are evil and we cause CWD and we wouldn't have CWD without it. And the finger pointing and trying to destroy farms in Minnesota, it got my gander up and I go on the defensive and I gotta defend and state the truth about what's going on. So I've done a lot of videos. You guys have enjoyed them. So here we are today. We're going to do another video, and you're not going to believe what's going on. It's just unbelievable. And again, I'm defensive. I got to get the truth out there on what's really happening. So I had a guy call me from southeast Minnesota. He shoots a nice buck, and he shoots it late October. He sends the lymph nodes in as required, drops them off at a station, and they come back as suspect for CWD. He gets a call from Kelsey from the Minnesota DNR, and she says, you know, if you want to keep the meat, you can. We'd like to get it. It's up to you, but we would really like to get the brain stem. And so he says, well, when can you come get it? Well, you know, deer season's coming up. We're pretty busy. All the game wardens are busy. There's a lot going on. So it might be 2-3 weeks before we can get out there and pick up the brain. If you could just throw the buck head antlers in a fridge, yeah, that'd be great. Well, close to 3 weeks later, the guy's dad's kind of upset. The deer head stinks in the fridge and they want to get rid of it, and the DNR never picked up the brain. They didn't get it, and you know, that's a double standard, you guys. On my farm, I got to collect the brain stems right away. I got to send in lymph nodes. I got to test 100% of the deer. This is a serious deal. And we take it seriously. We care about the wild deer. We care about our herd. We test 100% of our deer. But now the Minnesota DNR, they can say, well, we'll get there in 3 weeks. It's whenever we get there, that's when we're going to pick it up. And then we'll confirm, or maybe it doesn't have CW. We don't know. You guys, I'm tired of the finger pointing. I'm tired of the rhetoric that goes along with this. And so let's look back to last spring at Jamie Becker Finn and hear the rhetoric. It's not even, what she's saying isn't even true. In my opinion, Jamie Becker Finn is standing at the Capitol in front of our legislators, lying, in testimony, lying. Let's listen to what she says.
You can't bleach it off of a surface. You can't, if I threw it in just a normal, like, fire, it wouldn't die. Contain it, because we can't just bleach it off, or it won't just die. It's been recommended that people do not eat meat that's infected. No human cases of the disease at this point, but some disease specialists believe that that's just a matter of time.
So there you have it. CWD, you can't kill it with bleach, you can't kill it with fire, and it's not if it goes to humans, it's when. That's what she said. But there's reports out there from the National Institute of Health that say if you have an item that was exposed to CWD prions and it's contaminated and infected, the National Institute of Health is saying if you give it a 5-minute bath in a 40% bleach solution, you'll kill prions. So we got the National Institute of Health directly contradicting Jamie Becker Finn. She says you can't kill it with bleach. Well, who's telling the truth? She says it's not if it goes to humans, but when. You heard her say it. And other health experts all across the country are saying there's really, there's no evidence ever of it affecting a human. It hasn't happened. All this fear-mongering, all this rhetoric, why were they doing it? Why is Jamie Becker Finn a little puppet bulldog for the Minnesota DNR trying to outlaw deer farms? Why is it so important that all these structures and things are in place against deer farms? They want money and they don't like deer farms, period. We're infringing on their territory. The Minnesota DNR, they want all the hunts. We're having hunts, we're evil, we're taking their joy, we're stealing their joy. They don't like deer farms. So what happened with this case then? The guy shoots this deer. It never does get confirmed as CWD. If we're going to follow the rhetoric of Jamie Becker Finn, which we know is not true, but if she's going to say it's highly contagious, it's going to infect people, it's when it's going to happen, you can't clean it off with bleach, if that's what we're going to go with, and that's how they obtained $4.57 million, that's how they got it, well, then I expect the Minnesota DNR to follow that rhetoric. And that means Go get the brainstem right away. Pick it up. Let's find out if it's got CWD. Holy cows, we picked it up, we found out it's got CWD. What should they do next? Did this guy have his meat processed anywhere? Let's listen. So anyway, you had shot a deer in a CWD area where they're requiring testing of lymph nodes, is that correct?
Correct.
Tell me what happened.
I went out bow hunting. I heard a little bit of rustling behind me, and it was a nice buck. And drew back, and I put it right where I should at 20 yards. And I found my buck not too short of a track later, and I took out the lymph nodes as to what the DNR requires now, and sent them in, and turns out it was a suspect CWD.
Okay, and what do you remember the date that you shot your buck on?
October 23rd.
Okay.
23rd it was.
And what area were you hunting in?
646 in Winona County.
Was it 646?
Yeah.
Okay, in Winona County. So you got this buck that you were pretty happy with, and then did you bring the meat anywhere to be processed?
I did. I took it to a local butcher here because can't take the meat out of the area. So I had it all processed up and got the meat back, and that's actually when I already started kind of eating on it. That's when I finally got the call that they stated that it was possible suspect CWD positive.
And so they had tested your lymph nodes and said it was suspect for CWD?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you spend on processing?
Well, I want to say it was right around $375.
Okay. And you got hamburger made and steak cut and probably some sausage?
Yep, I had brats made also.
Okay. And how long did it take you from the day you shot the deer to get your results back?
Gosh, I want to say it was close to a week and a half to 2 weeks.
Okay. And then they called you and they said, we would like, the brain to be tested and a sample of meat at some point. And what did they tell you?
That they actually wanted to pick the deer up, but they had told me that they weren't going to pick it up until after the deer season, or after the upcoming gun season, which would have been 2 to 3 weeks almost. And they weren't even really sure on a date. And I mean, I ended up declining that. I was like, yeah, this kind of sounds iffy. I already had gun it down and was going to start European mounting it. Then they wanted me to end up giving them a brain sample and a meat sample also, or a tissue sample. So, and I actually never pulled through on doing that for them. But
so initially they told you it was suspect for CWD, and they said we'd like to come out. We'll send an officer. We'll come out and we'll get your brain stem and we'll take a sample of meat. But it's going to be after deer season, and you were concerned that could be 2-3 weeks away.
Yeah, I mean the refrigerator was definitely going to start stinking.
Did it sound like they were very concerned about how quick they picked it up?
It really didn't. I mean, they didn't sound really worried at all about it.
You opted not to give them a brain stem. They got a hold of you later, and you said, "Nah, I'm not doing it."
Yep.
What was your reason for not wanting to give it to them?
Well, I actually already started boiling it down. So, I mean, in all reality, it would have been useless.
On a deer farm, we're required to collect the brain stem right away and get it taken care of and get it sent in. It's pretty important, but with the deer in the wild in your area, they didn't feel it was too important. They thought they could wait 3 weeks to actually get the brain stem from you.
Right, and actually my dad was saying to get it out of the refrigerator because it was starting to stink.
So then, did they ask you where you had the meat processed?
They did, and I believe they did follow up with it, but I didn't hear much after that.
Did anybody tell you that they were recalling meat that had been through this local processing plant in Winona County?
No.
That they wanted the meat back, they wanted it destroyed. You didn't hear anything.
Yeah, they had said that they would like to take meat, but that was my option because I've already been eating on it. I guess I'm not too concerned about it, but.
And they wanted to take your meat, and you said you'd take it and keep it. You'd already been eating it. But as far as other meat in that locker plant are being processed, had you heard of them trying to reclaim anybody else's meat because it might have been cross-contaminated?
No, absolutely not.
Do you think you would have heard it if that would have happened?
Yeah, it's a pretty small town. Rumor travels pretty good around here.
Yep, there you go. He had his meat processed at a local processing plant in Winona. Well, if we're going to follow Jamie Becker-Finn's rhetoric, don't you think the Minnesota DNR, they believe what she said because they got their money. They believe it. They got the money. Now they got to act with what they believe. You can't kill it. You can't wipe it off. And if you get exposed, you could get CWD and die as a human. You guys, I don't believe that. but the Minnesota DNR sold it to us. So what should they have done? This meat was suspect. They did a test. Oh, it came back positive. Let's say that's what happened. Then you should do a public news announcement, and you should notify all the people that had meat processed at that locker plant. Your meat in that grinder, we can't wipe it off, we can't kill it, was exposed to an infected deer. You probably don't want to eat it because it's not if, it's when you're going to get CWD. What did the DNR do? There was no public media release. There was no news announcement. They didn't contact people who had meat processed there and say your meat was cross-contaminated. They did nothing because they've already got their money and they don't believe the rhetoric that Jamie Becker-Finn was saying in testimony anyway. They don't believe it. If they did believe it, well, then somebody should be fired because they didn't notify the people that they had infected meat. You guys, I'm tired of the finger pointing. I'm just sick of it. I was at a meeting with the Board of Animal Health the other day. I drove down to the cities and back. I'm fighting to save my farm, you guys. My back's up against the wall with 330 other farms in the state of Minnesota. We're fighting to save our farms, and we're being singled out and attacked. Some of you don't care about that, but listen, you're fighting to save your wild deer herd. You're in intensive slaughter areas. You got your deer traditions, your family, your grandpa, your grandsons, your kids. They're wiping out your deer, and they're using rhetoric to do it. So I'm at a meeting, and I said, why is it that a deer came in this year from Montana? A guy posted on the Minnesota Facebook page. He said, hey, I got my mule deer test results back, posed with a picture, and said, bummer, it had CWD. I got a freezer full of meat. I asked at the meeting, why is it that when that guy got an email or corresponded electronically with the state of, I think it was Montana, why is it that the state of Minnesota wasn't involved in that correspondence? Why didn't Minnesota DNR get involved and say, hey, we got the same email, we got the same notification that Joe Blow in Brainerd brought back an infected mule deer. Michelle Karstensen, the DNR Wildlife Health Program Supervisor, was at the meeting. And she said, we can't be included in those emails. We can't get access to that data because everybody that goes to a western state or Wisconsin and hunts, and if they get a deer and it's infected and they get notification, it's data privacy. We can't get access to it. So we're done. That's what Michelle said. I've tried, I can't get access to that data. Well, why is it that we're going to outlaw all the deer farms and make their lives so miserable? People can go get known infected animals, bring them back into Minnesota, and, we're just not going to talk about it. And we can't get the data because it's data privacy, so we're done. But let's keep focusing on deer farms. Let's focus on those guys. I got an idea for you, Michelle. I read an article where you were blaming deer farms in Winona County, and you said, well, it's evident that something, I'll put it on the screen, that, this is where the CWD came from, a deer farm. You're finger pointing. You're playing the name game. The blame game. I don't like that, Michelle. That farm in Winona County, the epidemiology report, what does it say, Michelle? It says that it was a taxidermy practice, was the very likely cause of a deer head coming in from Wisconsin. The infected meat was fed to cats. The intestinal tract of a carnivore, the prions can survive, and they come out in the feces, and then they infected this guy's little deer farm. That was the epidemiology report. Taxidermy practices are governed by the Minnesota DNR. But Michelle, as soon as you get a chance to go in the paper, what do? Let's blame a deer farm. Lying Lou was doing that on KFAN. Can we quit the name calling, the blaming? Can we just fight the disease? You guys have an agenda, and I'm just sick of it. Michelle, you're probably a good person, but stop. Michelle, you are not a law enforcement officer. When I worked in law enforcement, I could get public data, private data, data privacy. I could go get it. How did I do it? I got an administrative subpoena. I could get a search warrant. If you're telling me that data privacy trumps the state's deer herd and that there's no way you can get it, Michelle, go talk to your chief law enforcement officer for the DNR, have a meeting with your attorney, and sit down and say, what do we got to do to get included in these emails? Let's figure out how to stop these things from coming in, and when they do come in, we know about it instantly. Don't just throw your hands up and say, well, there's nothing we can do, it's data privacy. I don't want to hear it, okay? If I was working in the DNR, I'd walk right through that data privacy and I'd get that information and I'd know, and when a mule deer comes in from a western state with CWD, I would have an officer standing there saying, hey, guess what? We need to take the meat. Well, it's up to them if they want the meat. It's up to them. I mean, if they don't want to give us the meat, is that really true? Turn loose Jamie Becker Finn in the next legislative session. Turn your little puppet bulldog loose, turn her loose and tell her, we want it to be a misdemeanor for a person to knowingly possess CWD infected meat. After 48 hours of knowing about it, they have 48 hours, 72 hours to notify us that they're possessing CWD infected meat, and if they don't call us and tell us about it, so we can make arrangements to pick it up, it will be a $300 fine. Wow, that would fix it. But you're saying, well, they can give it to us if they want. How is it that Jamie Becker Finn can say it's so deadly and it's not if, it's when, but now we're going to let the people keep the meat and it's up to them if they want to eat it? Pass a law, Jamie Becker Finn. Michelle, motivator, pass a law. Quit the blame game. The Wisconsin Natural Resources Board for Chronic Wasting Disease, the Wisconsin Natural Resources, they formed a subcommittee on chronic wasting disease. I have their multi-page results here. But I'm going to read you a couple. We'll try to post the whole thing with this video. I'm going to summarize a couple lines here, okay? It says CWD is a very complex biological and social problem that affects multiple agencies, industries, scientists, researchers, deer farmers, and it goes on. Guess what it says at the bottom? CWD is being used to move political agendas, seek funding, further anti-hunting agendas, run deer farmers out of business, and as an excuse for deer population reduction, just to name a few. This is who's reporting to the DNR, what they found out on CWD, page 1, okay? The sensationalism used to further these agendas is making people fear zombie deer, afraid to eat venison, and they're even afraid to hunt deer. In many instances, it has turned into a blame game. Yep, Michelle, Lying Lou, blame game, pitting areas of the state that have not yet lived with CWD against those that have. Deer farms are commonly blamed for the spread of CWD by the very people that have dumped deer carcasses on the landscape as long as they have hunted. It has unfairly led to the lack of confidence in the department to solve a problem that solutions have yet to be discovered anywhere in the world. They haven't come up with a solution. The sensationalism of these different agendas does have one economic benefit. It sells newspapers. You guys, if we're going to solve this CWD thing and keep Minnesota safe, Michelle needs to quit spouting off in the paper that deer farms are to blame. Lying Lou needs to quit going on KFAM that deer farms are to blame. You guys need to buckle down, take your $4.57 million, have some meetings with your law enforcement, get together in a room, have a meeting, bring in an attorney for advice, come up with a way to access email databases that have records that say this many deer were brought into Minnesota and they were confirmed as having CWD. And we're going to have an officer standing at their door. Figure it out, you guys. Quit blaming deer farms. Focus on your wild herd. The Board of Animal Health is doing a good job. Let them focus on the deer farms, and you guys focus on the wild herd. That's all I have, but guess what? I got more videos coming out because someone's got to keep an eye on the corruption and the crap that's going on. So this is what I have to do to defend my farm. I'm glad you enjoyed the video. Thank you.